Good morning. Just ahead, we look at what questions remain after the 4-day manhunt resulting in the capture and death of Miles Sanderson. And our Moises Canal-Savine joins us from the Weather Center. Good morning, Moises.
Good morning, Kimberley. A high of 18 degrees, a mix of sun and cloud in the Queen City today. We'll have more coming up with your weather for this upcoming weekend. Plus, we chat with the CEO of Parkinson Canada about this weekend's Super Walk. That's later in our 8 o'clock hour.
You're watching Global Regina. This is Global News Morning.
Good morning, I'm Kimberley Fowler, and thank you for joining us. On the year she celebrated her Platinum Jubilee, marking 70 years on the throne, Queen Elizabeth II has passed away at the age of 96. During her illustrious life, the Queen made many trips to Saskatchewan and became quite fond of the province and its people. Troy Charles has reaction from the Queen City on the death of the longest-serving monarch in British history.
In my estimation, she never put a foot wrong. She was always spot on with whatever she did.
After learning of Queen Elizabeth II's passing, Elaine Jekyll and her daughter placed flowers at the foot of Queen Elizabeth's statue at the Regina Legislature. The statue has the Queen atop her favorite horse, a Saskatchewan-born black mare named Burmese. Over her 70 years on the throne, the Queen made 6 trips to Saskatchewan, once as a princess and 5 times a queen.
Her Majesty was very much a fan of Saskatchewan, and that's why she kept coming back. But also she spoke of the Saskatchewan people. What made Saskatchewan great is from many people's strengths.
Her first trip in 1951 as princess is remembered by Peter Menzies, whose grandfather, Garnet Menzies, was Regina's mayor at the time.
I've got a framed copy of the leader post coverage of the day. Grandma's kind of standing to her side off in the picture, but I remember her, as a little boy. I mean, she just glowed over that moment.
The news also hit close to home for those British citizens who now reside on the prairies. Malcolm Craig from Chef Malcolm's Handmade Pies has been in Canada almost 20 years, and he remembers the Queen's final visit to the Queen City in 2005.
It was a bit of a shock, but, she had a fair innings, I would suggest. 70 years on the throne and, 96 years alive. I think it's pretty good.
It turns out the Queen's connection to Saskatchewan held true till her last days, as the final public statement from Her Majesty was a message of condolences to those affected by the recent stabbing attacks.
She was the first of the royal family to be on television and to be broadcasting to the public, stating that she would serve until her last day. Today, she served until her last day.
Troy Charles, Global News.
And that's a look at King Charles III, who is now at Buckingham Palace and has been greeting the thousands of people who are waiting for him to arrive outside the gates. King Charles left Balmoral in Scotland earlier this morning, making the journey back to London as he gets set to address the nation, where he will pay tribute to his mother and pledge to serve as head of state. He'll be joined by Camilla, the Queen Consort. The King will also hold an audience today with British Prime Minister Liz Truss at Buckingham Palace.
As her 12th Canadian Prime Minister, I'm having trouble believing that my last sit-down with her was my last. I will so miss those chats. She was thoughtful, wise, curious, helpful, funny, and so much more.
Visibly emotional, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shared his thoughts on the Queen. He described her as a steady grace in a complicated world. Queen Elizabeth was the longest-serving monarch in British history and served as Canada's head of state for nearly half of the country's history. Canadians coast to coast spent 4 days on high alert as authorities worked tirelessly to find mass murder suspect Miles Sanderson. He was taken into police custody Wednesday afternoon, then suddenly died shortly after. Our Tegan Rashaw takes a deeper dive into the arrest and the questions that remain.
The 11th alert of a 4-day manhunt, the final sound to the public as police zeroed in on Miles Sanderson.
Over the past past 4 days, RCMP officers have been working on locating Miles Sanderson, following up on each and every tip from the public.
Wednesday afternoon, Sanderson stole a white Chevy Avalanche from a residence in Waka. Officers pursued the suspect before directing his vehicle off the road south of Rostern. Sanderson was finally arrested.
Shortly after being arrested, he went into medical distress. Emergency medical services responded, and he was transported to hospital in Saskatoon, and that's where he was deceased.
Because Saskatchewan RCMP took Sanderson into custody, that force can't investigate what went wrong. Determining how he died and why has to be done by an external body.
The reviews that have already been commenced in Saskatchewan do seem appropriate at the start. Whether or not they are sufficient from the point of view of the public, the survivors, and First Nations communities particularly, is quite another matter.
The investigation will be conducted by two groups, the Saskatoon Police Service and a civilian-led organization. To avoid having police officers investigate police officers, in 2021, the province brought in independent oversight of serious incidents involving police. The group is called the Serious Incident Response Team. In Sanderson's death, the RCMP has also requested the Ministry of Justice appoint an independent observer. Back on James Smith Cree Nation, the community can finally start healing, but some questions may never be answered.
In the absence of a criminal trial, which would have been delayed anyway, you won't really find out much more than that through the processes that have been commenced.
Sanderson might be the only person who knew the motive. Tegan Rasha, Global News.
Now we head back to the Weather Center and check in with Moises. Moises, it's Friday, but does the weekend look better than that 3 degrees I'm seeing on the screen right now?
Kind of weird having to come up to work today with a jacket on. I can't remember the last time I did that, probably this spring. But as Kimberly mentioned, it is 3 degrees right now in Regina. I do have some good news, though. If you are hoping for hot weather, it looks like that'll be coming up later on in the weekend. But today is going to be a cooler day. I can't lie, folks. We see right now in Regina 3 degrees, and a lot of the conditions right now in the province, especially in the south, in the single digits. And as we move into the afternoon, we're not even going to reach that 20-degree mark. You can see here, even in the southwest, 18 in Leader and Maple Creek. Saskatoon hoping to reach 17. 19 in Moose Jaw, 18 in Regina and the southeast. As we take a closer look at what we can expect in Regina today, folks, noon, 16 degrees, and we're going to have some mix of sun and cloud, of course, this afternoon, and it's going to move right into the overnight hours as well. A high of 18 is what we're hoping to reach at about 3 o'clock coming up this afternoon. Now, if we look at our futurecast, as I mentioned, some cloud coverage here in the south central parts of the province as well. Those are going to move out as we move into your weekend, and we're going to have some clear conditions coming up this weekend. So if you're hoping to spend some time outdoors, if you're wanting to do some cleaning, this might be the weekend to do it, because we have clear conditions coming up for this weekend. As we look further along, 28 degrees coming up on Sunday, lots of sunny conditions on the way there, but we do see some more cloud coverage move into the forecast on Tuesday. Now taking a look at your Saskatchewan photo, this one's sent in by Marge, taking in Regina a nice sunrise. This is a sunset photo that was sent in by Joel from Jackfish Lake, and some kids, of course, doing some harvest this time of year. Amy sent this one in from near Shell Lake. Thank you, Amy, Joel, and Marge. Of course, if you want to send us your photos, folks, make sure you send us to at these locations, and make sure you put your name and the title and the location.
Global News Morning Weather is brought to you by Apex, regulating the professions, protecting the public.
The Queen's face remains a prominent fixture across Canada, and perhaps nowhere is more prevalent than on our currency. In the wake of her passing, one of the thousands of questions that emerged is what will happen to our money? In terms of coins with her effigy, not much will be changing. All of the coins will continue to be legal tender, and it will be up to the government if they'd like to update the image. As for the $20 bill, it will still circulate for some time, but will eventually be replaced with one bearing King Charles. That's according to the bank. New air passenger protection regulations came into effect yesterday. The update comes as the Canadian Transport Agency tries to close a loophole in the federal rules. Since 2019, airlines were only required to compensate passengers when disruptions happened for reasons the airlines could control. This left some passengers unable to secure cash refunds after pandemic-related flight cancellations. Airlines will now be required to issue a full refund for cancellation and delays if passengers are not placed on a new flight within 48 hours. That includes for reasons outside the airline's control. Still ahead, more from London on the Queen's death. Up next, we go back to the United Kingdom for additional reaction to the passing of Queen Elizabeth at 96. But first, a live look outside with our Global Regina City Cam, brought to you by the Capital Auto Mall on the corner of Rochdale and Pasqua. Waking up to 3 degrees right now, heading up to a high of 18 here in Regina. And you're watching Global News Morning. Stay with us.